All right, hello everyone. This is Casey here, back again on the Astrology, and I just kind of want to do a little current update of the planetary energy going on right now. Just kind of, I want to keep it one step at a time. I know we're in a very, very important week with, the partial solar new moon eclipse in Aquarius that's marking the year of the fire horse in Chinese astrology. It's a new lunar calendar, and the big Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries at the 0 point of the zodiac. And it just, it's just important though to take things one step at a time, because there's so much happening that leads up to these big events, and it's going to be happening throughout most of the year here. And just look at February. We had all this, like, right off the bat. We had the full moon in Leo on the 1st, and then a few days later Uranus went direct for its last time in Taurus before it settles into Gemini in late April, which is a pretty big thing, pretty big plot line, storyline to or it's a pretty big, what am I trying to say? Big part of the script to the whole storyline of all the shifts, is the Uranus going direct one last time in Taurus. And then we had Mercury entering Pisces on the 6th, in which Mercury is, kind of highly debilitated in Pisces, which I also talked about. And then February 10th, a couple days ago, it entered, Venus entered Pisces, and that Venus is actually exalted, so it's kind of opposite from the effect that Mercury has on Pisces. And then now today, Mercury conjuncted the North Node and opposed the South Node, in which I will talk about that. And I will get into Saturn and Aries, since that's happening on the 14th. So this is what's currently will be going on, that I just want to, lead us into the whole big shifts that are taking place, all the big catalysts for the new emerging world. So let's go back to the Mercury conjunct North Node. I always have these pop-ups on my computer. So here it is, Mercury and the North Node. This is really signifying that we have to be very careful with our thoughts, our thinking, and the words that we are saying, the stuff that's coming out of our mouth. Because what we're thinking and what we're saying is rapidly manifesting right now as it conjuncts the North Node. And it's either pulling us towards the future of the North Node, or it's pulling us in opposition to the comfort zone tug of the South Node in Virgo. Because we're not comfortable with the stuff happening mentally right now in Pisces with the North Node, because the North Node is not naturally comfortable. And neither is Mercury with Pisces, and Pisces with Mercury, vice versa, because it's a debilitated placement. But I've made the video about how Mercury in Pisces is a very high vibration, because it's like abandoning logic, because the intuition is so high. Like its communication can feel rather elusive, or just kind of spacey, but it's actually picking up on higher planes of thought. But like I said, that's even more increase to why it's so much more important to be careful with what we're thinking, what we're saying, the thought process that we have right now, because so many things are rapidly manifesting and momentum continues to keep increasing and accelerating at maximum speed, especially because Mercury is also the planet associated with speed. Mercury had wings, right? In the ancient description. So we need to understand right now that we can't get tugged into past thinking. That's first and foremost. And what happens when a planet, and we're going to have Venus move across the North Node on the 18th, and then the Sun will also cross the North Node, I think, later this month. And it just, whenever a planet activates or is conjunct and opposite on the nodes, it usually means a further divide and a splitting of timelines. And what's interesting about all this is that I've been hearing about how a lot of bars and restaurants on the Super Bowl had to separate people on one end of their restaurant or bar to watch the different halftime shows, like the Kid Rock or Super Bowl halftime show, or the actual Bad Bunny Super Bowl halftime show. I don't know. I don't really pay much attention. I did watch a little bit of the second half of the game. I didn't watch the halftime show. But it's just funny how much more divided we're getting and how much they're promoting the division, because they know that since Pluto's in Aquarius, the last thing that they want is us to make a united stand, because divide and conquer has always worked, right? I've always said that Pluto in Aquarius is going to be the power of the people, or the power over the people, and it's just up to us to see the dark shadows and what is being done to us as a collective unit, the corruption that Pluto wants to bring to the surface, so we can come together, purify and authenticate the collective good and the collective urge and the collective beat of humanity. And it's just interesting how much now that they're using, just as Mercury was approaching the North Node and the Super Bowl, they're using this more to split, kind of feed off the splitting timeline and the further of the division. And like I said, Venus and the Sun will be there. Eventually Mars will cross it as well. And this is where you don't want to get sucked into the past of the South Node, the opposition to the South Node of past thinking, past ways you communicate or process information with this transit. So it's just be very conscientious of what you're thinking and doing right now. This was actually earlier today. I mean, it's about 10 p.m. I'm on the West Coast in Southern California, so this did happen earlier today. We will still feel it for the next day or two. Pretty strongly, I'd say. But it's time to really step, really get our thinking to out of our comfort zone, basically. When the Mercury is conjuncting the North Node, we really have to embrace a mentality that may feel unfamiliar to us. So that's Mercury conjunct the North Node, and then and then we have here Saturn entering Aries at 0 degrees, the beginning of a brand new cycle, brand new shift. I just want to look at this ingress chart real quick. Yeah, so Saturn entering Aries. I've talked about how Saturn is in its fall in Aries. And fall placements don't really do that great in when a sign is in its fall, or a planet is in a sign that's in its fall. It's like I've talked about how Saturn in Aries kind of feels like like being in a job where it has no experience in. It needs a lot of help. It needs a lot of backing. It needs a lot of support. Because it's, Aries is symbolically the infant, and Saturn is the old wise disciplinarian that knows what's true and correct and what will get you on your way so that you can handle what life throws at you. And Aries being very incoherent to that, and a sign that has to make probably more mistakes than most before they actually learn them. Aries is notorious for bumping into shit constantly, and being self-taught, and, to pioneer their own way through life. We may, like I said, with Saturn and Neptune, being in conjunction, the matrix, like I said, it may unplug itself, and it may just, we may not realize, like, oh crap, like, how dependent have we been on the matrix, and are we ready to be unplugged from it? We may not really have the resources, or realize that we need a lot more help than we thought in order to embrace this new world where Neptune's fifth dimensional higher consciousness is being integrated into Saturn's solidifying third dimensional reality. And knowing that Saturn is in its fall, if humanity is going to be on its own, we may not really realize, we may think that we've come so far in some ways, and in other ways realize that we haven't, and then a whole new other obstacles or setbacks start showing up, because the challenges that we have to face with Saturn and Aries not having, it's like, I've also made the reference of, like, it's playing pool but never even knowing what pool was, or you're first now being introduced to how, like, the stick and the all the stripes and solid balls on the table and the pockets, and you have to learn how to hold the stick. You got to learn the rules of the game, and you never even heard of it before. It's brand new to you. This is like a brand new cycle, and that's kind of what our starting point is going to feel like. Now, don't get me wrong, it has that Aries passion and excitement, but it's also, there's going to be some growing pains that go along with it, and it may not be exactly as we think. But one thing about Aries is that it does like the challenge. So if we can kind of see this as like a boot camp, where Aries usually likes challenges that are competitive. Saturn challenges maybe not as much, because it can kind of put you through boot camp or test your patience or delay things, and Aries doesn't know how to be very patient. At least not. It's not in their nature. It has to be integrated, and Saturn is the planet of integration and structure and character building. So we have to build and maybe even rebuild our new, strong, innate sense of self many times over. And having Saturn-Neptune conjunction, Neptune's over here, is, if we haven't built a strong inner sense of self by now, it's, the reality distortions of our unconscious mind of Neptune will play out in reality, and we will fall victim and prey to it. We have to start building a strong, raw faith in who we are, what trail we want to blaze, and what it is that we are, what we've been building towards. And if you haven't really been building anything, well, I don't know. I as the Matrix unplugs, it sounds like you may be too dependent on it, and I don't know where it's going to leave everyone. So Saturn in Aries is, it's, the time it has arrived, but the growing pains, as Saturn settles here in Aries, it's going to take some time. And hopefully Neptune can come to the angelic aid to bring about more spiritual guidance to help us with Saturn's tests and obstacles. And Saturn and Neptune are kind of like the heart and test of the true believers. And in Aries, it's like the enlightened soldier, the spiritual warrior, and that's basically, we need to stay inspired regardless of what comes our way. And a real important thing to understand is that, like, life doesn't actually really get any easier. That could just, Neptune could be leading us into thinking that life just gets easier. No, life doesn't actually get easier. We just get better at learning how to handle it. And that's really what we need to kind of prepare for, moving along into this conjunction with Saturn and Neptune. So Saturn in Aries will be on I believe it's the 14th. And then, we got all this other stuff going on. I'll make a video on the eclipse, and I'll talk about the eclipse and the Venus conjunction to the north node. But yeah, let's do things one step at a time, because it's all important. It's all important pieces to the puzzle. So I'll leave it there. So for all of you, don't just take care, but give care too. And I will see you next time.